All right, Joe, finally got you in here.
Finally.
Joe Panichello. He's an interesting character, to say the least. You seem to have lived many lives. We met probably, I guess, about 5 years ago now. And you have an interest in songwriting, amongst many other things. And when I first met, you kind of take people off guard because you just kind of, you settle in, you're unabashed, and you just come in and you don't mind making yourself welcome anywhere you go. And I think that's a beautiful thing about you. But I would go on to realize that your hobbies and everything were all a tribute to your wife who passed away of cancer. And you realize after getting to know you a little bit that you've been grieving, and a lot of these artistic endeavors that you do are things to express your love to her, and you kind of tribute everything to her. And your life has been kind of a love story in itself. So tell me about first your music and what got you into that.
Well, I have always been interested in music in the family. My brothers all played an instrument. My father played several instruments. They were really into music. They wrote their music that they played and that they performed. I was always the kid that tugged along and carried the equipment. If they were playing at somebody's wedding, for example, in the neighborhood, I would get to carry in the accordion or the guitars and what have you. I never learned how to write music like my father did and my brothers did, but I appreciated what they used to do. I didn't read music. And
you're a big fan of music.
I was always a fan of music. We always had music in the house. And I always had a love for it. But I never had a chance to expose it to the public. The thing that really got me interested in getting it out there was when my wife passed away. When my wife passed away, she was always a person that kind of motivated me to write music, write out my feelings and so forth, depending on whatever job I was involved in. But I never thought that what I was doing, the advocation, would be something that developed into what my doctors were very, they were very observant and said for an 87-year-old man, what kept me going was the fact that I was creating the music and writing the music, and through people like yourself and some others, I was lucky enough to get it out there because I never dreamed I'd be having it recorded professionally. Mm-hmm. But you hit the nail on the head. The best move I ever made, from the time I was in college and deciding whether to go into pro baseball or go into teaching and coaching, was the chance meeting that I met Jeanette, and it started all there, and it hadn't stopped.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So from the beginning, Joe is, how would you call it? You're a bit of a raconteur. You're basically like a Renaissance man in a way, I'd say, because you brought in these clips of, this is the Rams football team, and so you were on the team.
I was a coach,
or you were the coach of the team, and but you were also played football yourself.
Oh yeah.
And what other sports did you play? Wrestling,
baseball, and wrestling.
So you kind of were like the Bo Jackson back in the day of school sports, and then so you could have went on to play potentially professional baseball.
Yep.
Was that?
Mm-hmm.
And what position was that?
I was a catcher.
Catcher. And what team was it that was looking at?
Well, went to college and played at Bloomsburg State, which is now Bloomsburg University, part of the Penn State University system. And I was fortunate enough to work out a number of times in Philadelphia with professional baseball teams before their games as a prospect. And then when I graduated, well, the 4 years that I was at college, the 4 summers I spent in the Combine League. And we played in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which was the Philadelphia Phillies. The Williamsport Grays were part of the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Mm-hmm. And the manager of the Williamsport Grays at the time, when I was playing there during the summer conference games, the manager became the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies major league team. Mm. So I was always able to have good coaching along the way. But I spent 4 years in that combined league, which would have been equivalent to probably a B league or an A league or something like that. Mm-hmm. And when I made a decision to not to go into professional baseball, I was experiencing what we thought was a problem with in my left ear, which became a 4F problem with the Army. I tried to join the Army and go to Vietnam, and I flunked the physical because of what I was treated for in college for concussions. As it turns out, the 2 doctors, Dr. Ferris and his son, ear doctors at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital, they performed surgery on my ear, and they found a damaged eustachian tube in my ear, which was causing vertigo, problems like that. And that was one thing the major leagues were cautious of. I have dizzy spells, and occasionally would black out and cause the problem. Mm-hmm. And but the decision was made for me. I always just said I wasn't good enough to make the pros, but the best thing that ever happened to me was the last day of summer school. I had 2 letters in my mailbox. One letter was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, from the Milwaukee Braves. And I owe a lot to the Milwaukee Braves because I worked out with them 3 different times in Philadelphia as a prospect, and got to play with players like Warren Spahn and Lou Burdett and Bob Buell. And Henry Aaron was on the team. Frank Torrey, which was Joe Torrey's brother, was the first baseman. And so they were very good to me. Lou Perino was the owner, the owner of the Milwaukee Braves. And I always got good treatment when they came to Philadelphia, and I got a chance to dress in the locker room and be a big star, and that was a big heady thing for me. But my last day of summer, I got 2 letters. One was from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, instructed me to go to Bradenton, Florida, to McKechnie Field, which was at the time the Braves training camp. That's where they trained before they went to Palm Beach. And the other letter was from the Anne Arundel County Schools in Annapolis, Maryland. Had no idea what that was. So I opened the Milwaukee letter and opened up the second letter, and it was from a fellow by the name of Mr. John Laycock. He was the principal of a high school in Annapolis, Maryland. Said that I was recommended for a job to teach and coach. Would I be interested in coming to Maryland? And I called Philadelphia. I called my mom and dad, and my father gave me good Italian advice from a father. Joe, you're too slow to be a major league player.
He just gave you
He said, you run with a refrigerator on your back. You're too slow. At the time, they wanted speed, and I didn't have that speed that I could score from second base. And so I decided to go for an interview to Annapolis, Maryland, and 2 weeks later, met this girl from North Carolina, and I was told not to get my hopes up too high because that was considered the Carolina League, and I was playing in the wrong league. I was from Philadelphia and Italian, and that didn't mix. And besides that, she was pinned to be engaged.
Mm-hmm. And this is Jeanette you're talking about.
That's right.
And so a lot of your songs, what's fun about the music you write is they're little excerpts of stories. These stories you tell in person are now in song form.
Oh yes.
And
you took a chance. You took a chance with me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That song means a lot to me. Every time I see her picture in my bedroom, I think about that. That was something else. It really was. But
tell us about the story behind that, your experience.
Well, my wife Jeanette, at the time, she had graduated from Wake Forest University, Winston-Salem, and they were having a get-together back in Winston-Salem. It was close to Christmas time, and the plans were for them to get together and so forth and so on, and she would go on to Winston-Salem, and I was to stay in Annapolis, Maryland, and finish out my teaching that week. And a friend of hers, Libby Finch, whose father was from Mount Airy, and Libby's father was Andy Griffith's principal at Mount Airy High School, and he was also the baseball coach. And so anyhow, I rode with Libby down to North Carolina, find a place to stay for the weekend, and be an observer to what Jeanette was preparing to do and so forth, and had a chance to go and visit with her family, and we did, and it was kind of a brief get to know you, and Jeanette was she informed them that she was going to start to date me when she went back to Annapolis, and her mother and father said, if you do, don't come back. Mm-hmm. And so I got in the driver's seat of her car. She got in, and we left on a Sunday night. It was rainy, it was chilly. And when we got to the Virginia state line, I said, Jeanette, you're taking a chance with me. And she said, we're going to Annapolis, and we're going to get married. Mm. And I knew right then and there that this was a very serious situation, but it must have been heartbreaking for her. Mm. But she made a decision that that's what she wanted to do. She was going to do. As a matter of fact, the day that we got married, and there are songs that you probably are familiar with, "Lady in Lace" mm-hmm. and "Vows of Old," mm-hmm. and I remember at St. Mary's Catholic Church getting married. She gave herself away, and she sent out 100 beautiful handwritten invitations to come to the wedding, and nobody came except her mom and dad, her brother and sister. And she actually gave herself away. She walked 100 steps up the aisle to the church altar to marry me. And that was a beautiful day, and it was a day that I'll never forget. And the songs came so easy after that.
Mm-hmm. You have a beautiful picture of that, of you two, and it is in the church, and it is just pretty much the two of you, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah,
it really is. And she was determined. And I was still pursued by a couple of major league teams, and to go away. But I was teaching and coaching in Maryland and Baltimore at the time, and she was a trooper. She was willing to go ahead and be a minor league player's wife. You know, when I'd be driving around on buses with 18-year-old high school kids, and I was actually a grown man at the time, and but we decided that to take another course and of occupation to keep the family going and so forth. And I eventually got out of teaching and coaching. Now I never got out of coaching. I'm still coaching from the sidelines.
For today,
I'm one of those
to this
guys.
very day, you're
I'm one of
still
those guys
coaching.
that watches TV and finds everything wrong with.
Well, you're a good orator. You can recognize a life lesson, but you're good at teaching somebody. I mean, it's one thing to know something, but then to be able to explain it and share it is another thing. And you do have a gift with that.
One of the this is interesting. I was at Mount St. Joseph's College, which was high school at the time. Mount St. Joseph's High School, which we were in the Catholic League in Baltimore, Maryland, with Loyola and a lot of other big schools in Maryland. And I was coaching football, and I was invited to go and interview for a job at Western Maryland College in Westminster, Maryland. And the job with the fellow's name was Bob Woodard. He was the athletic director. He was the head coach, and he was moving to, I think, the University of Richmond. And so Jeanette and I went up. We did not realize she was pregnant at the time with Chris. We drove up there, just jumped in the car and drove up from Baltimore up to Westminster. And I met three of the men at the campus at the college for this job as assistant football, wrestling, and baseball coach. And one of the men said, would you stay a little bit? I wanted to talk to you out in the lobby, and introduced himself. He was in the interview process. His name was Dick Pugh. He became the head coach, athletic director at Riverview High School, your old school. And he asked me to spend the night with Jeanette and I at his home with his wife and family. We didn't have a pair of pajamas with us or a toothbrush. And he said, I want to go over some game film with you from Riverview High School. I'm moving to Sarasota. And we stayed up all night long watching film. They were films, and they were canned films, offense and defense, of the Riverview High School. And on the outside it said Tony Swain Productions, Sarasota, Florida. I remember him. Tony Swain. I think they're still in operation. And so we looked at film, and we looked at a playbook, and we looked at a number of other things. And he asked me to talk to Jeanette about coming down to Sarasota to be his assistant athletic director and to help him with putting together this program. And at the time, I had a contract with Mount St. Joe, and I couldn't see breaking the contract with they were the Zavarian brothers. They're like the Franciscans. And I had a contract, and I wanted to fill out that contract, which we did. And I was coaching a couple of other sports too, teaching history. But as soon as the season was over, Jeanette and I left. We packed up and we left. We came to Sarasota, and that started a new adventure for us. But it was so funny that talking about this, talking about, God has a plan for you. And I was teaching at Mount St. Joe, and I was teaching a world history class, and Brother Howard, he was one of the Zavarian brothers. He came into the room with his black cassock on and said, Mr. Panichello, there's a phone call for you in the Brother Bartell's office from Sarasota, Florida. I'll take the rest of your class. Go up and talk to whoever. So I got on the phone, and it was Dick Pugh calling from Sarasota, asking me officially to accept the job at Riverview. I had not yet spoken to Jeanette about it yet, that I was thinking about it. And he said, there's somebody here on the phone, and that would be Ed Brown, who was the principal. He said, we'll take a verbal commitment from you because I have to meet at Shade and Hatton Street tonight with the Board of Education, and as principal, put your name forward as an accredited teacher and coach coming, but we'll have to have your word for it. And I said, would you give me any time to think about it? They said, no, actually, we like to have your word one way or the other. I have to prepare myself for this meeting, Ed Brown said. So I said, Mr. Brown, I'm coming to Sarasota. And Dick says that you still have to tell your wife yet, right? Well, that afternoon, Mount St. Joe was coaching baseball. And that afternoon, we were playing for the city title at the stadium, the Orioles Stadium. So I had that on my mind. So after the game, we won the game. Then I still had to drive 25 miles to Sarasota or to Annapolis, where we were living, to explain to Jeanette that I just took a job down in Sarasota, Florida, at a place called Riverview High School. How do you feel about it? And she said, well, I have a Gulf. She had a Gulf roadmap, Gulf gasoline roadmap, and she rolled it out on the kitchen table to put her finger on Annapolis, Maryland, and the other finger on Sarasota, Florida. And she said, I guess we're going. And that's the way we started. But she was a trooper, and I'm glad we made the decision. But I have to say this, that I learned a lot from Dick Pugh, and I was considered one of the coaches that was probably not a good overall coach, but Dick saw in me certain qualities with position coaching, where there were isolated cases of positioning players, specialties, whether it's kicking team or that I could contribute a lot. And I watched games, pro games yesterday, and I could tell you what was wrong with the defense and what was going to happen just by looking at outside linebackers, for example. I would look at the game and break the game down. The kids used to call me the brain coach. I wasn't much of a brain, but the kids called me the brain coach. But I love coaching, and I would love to do it today, but I just can't get around like I used to. But I love doing the music, and I met some really nice, wonderful people, and I'm getting a chance to express my attitude and my feelings about things. And to me, they feel like they're getting better. And I'm exposed to a lot more in the field with people who are really professionals and make me look good.
Well, because you're a bit of a social butterfly, you always seem to land yourself in positions that just seem extraordinary. For one, you got an arrangement with a guy that was in Nashville, Billy Anderson, runs a professional studio, and you talked your way into a situation where you call his phone up and leave a voicemail. Then he will extrapolate what your intentions were via your melody as best you can and the lyrics, and he will craft accompanying music to it and produce it. Find a singer, a professional singer that could then sing the vocal to it. And so now you counted how many songs you have?
66 of them.
66 songs, and you've also done different treatments to them. You've had some kind of instrumental, some piano versions, some Quiet Chords is one of your albums that's just more of an instrumental version of a lot of those songs you've written.
Well, since we last talked, there's been several things that have developed. There are 2 Frank Sinatra impersonators, men that sing professionally, that are now working with 2 of my songs. One is in New York City or New York, Long Island, and one is here in Sarasota. And I really feel honored that they are now talking about writing arrangements with their band and so forth, and using some of the music, some of my material, in with their repertoire. And it makes I just wish Jeanette were alive to see it all take place, and I just have fun doing it.
Well, before she passed, well, let's say you were a family man, so you have one of those relationships that it's true love, and you had two kids, John and Chris, and they were your life, and so they took up. They were the focus of your life, and you gladly spent your time with them, with your focus on them. And then now that she's passed and your kids are grown, you have a giant hole you're trying to fill, and this has been your outlet to kind of work through those emotions and get the stories told for your kids. And so she told you at some point, instructed you to write music. Is that correct?
She used to, and we lived in Raleigh, and I would come home from work, and then things didn't go right, and so I'd be crying in my beer, so to speak. She would say, with her little Southern accent, "Now, honey, why don't you just go up to Studio 32 and write about it?" Well, Studio 32 was a bedroom upstairs, and we had an old Panasonic recorder, and that didn't work all the time, and you had to hold a little microphone and talk into it. Had little black cassettes we used to get, for $1 at the grocery store at the checkout place. And she said, "You go on up there to Studio 32." She called it Studio 32, and that's how I originally got started. But I heard from I met a fellow by the name of Bill Guy in Raleigh, North Carolina, who was a lawyer, and he was also in the music business with a group called the Connells. And we got together through a woman that would do recordings for him, and she recommended that he listen to some of my tapes, and they turned out that he would record them himself, and he was a great guy, Bill Guy. And as a matter of fact, he acted as an attorney for one song that I wrote for Motown called "The Night Shift." And what happened was the Commodores recorded it without our permission. And that was quite an interesting. I still know nothing about the music business. You can go into the weeds with me in a minute. And but I got started in the business quite accidentally. But some of the music we sent off to people like Ronald Reagan when he was president, and the Department of the Navy. Matter of fact, you have some letters, I think, in that little stack that I gave you today, are some copies of some letters that I received regarding the music. But probably one of the funniest things that ever happened was meeting Perry Como. And if he were alive today, Perry would probably be singing some of it would be right up Perry's alley. But that was the funniest situation that happened along the way with Perry Como and Mickey Glass, his manager, when he was in his heyday. And I didn't realize that connection even there gave me motivation on my own to further the interest in the music part. But Perry never lived long enough to ever listen to the music. But I had a lot of wonderful opportunities with people.
You brush shoulders with a lot of
Yes.
the greats.
Yeah.
Here's a photo of you and Tom Lasorda.
Tommy Lasorda was an interesting character. He was from Norristown, Pennsylvania, and he was actually related to my sister-in-law, Palma. Moles, Moles. By the way, is the same way Eugene Moles, the guitarist, spells his name, Moles, Moles. And but Tommy was an interesting character, and people remember him as the Los Angeles manager and so forth. But he had a hard time landing a job eventually with the Dodgers. He had a very, very difficult road to plow ahead on. And
I see on this caption here, it reads, "To Joe, you and the Dodgers are both great. The Janetta sauce is really good.
Jeanette and I were in the sauce business for a bit.
So you make
We
spaghetti
made,
sauce.
We made tomato sauce. We were with the help of North Carolina State University and a company up in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. It's called Furman, F-U-R-M-A, and you can still get their tomato products from Mono. It's called at a grocery store. But we had a contract with Winn-Dixie, and we made all of our spaghetti sauce for Winn-Dixie, who was a wonderful company to work for. And the fellow that I remember that I was he was the man that wrote the checks to me. His name was Joe Bryan, and only met him several times, but always paid me within 10 days. And I had a lot of good help from Dr. Bill Hoover from NC State, the School of Food Science, and at Furman. And it was a lot of hard work, but we got it done. And Jeanette and the boys were they were really good, and a lot of people that were notables eventually found out about it, tasted it, and called us and wrote to us and so forth. Because we were local, and it was like it was a nice story.
And in true Joe Panichello form, you named the sauce the Janetta sauce, which of course
Jeanette's. My father had spoke broken English. He loved Jeanette, and he called Jeanette Jeanette, and so the sauce became. He never lived long enough. Lived long enough to see the product on a shelf in Winn-Dixie.
You really have a special place in your heart for your Italian roots, and you've even written a small children's book, Shoes for Alessandro.
Shoes for Alessandro.
And tell us about that.
Well, it's a true story about my father, who grew up in a small town near Naples, about 2 hours from Naples, called Riccia. It was in the province of Campobas, the region of Molise. And the reason why I say is because everything is very political in the regions. And my father grew up with a large family, and one of the issues they always had was they never had enough shoes to go around. They would take turns going to school and take turns wearing each other's shoes. And my grandfather, who I never met, his name was Severio. He ran the estate in the province for the Mark and the Marchese at the time. The Mark and the Marchese were very, very political people, and did a lot for the people in the region. And she took a liking to my father, and saw that he went to the monastery school to train him by the monks. And he was a very smart guy. He knew by the time he was in 12 years old, he was doing high school mathematics and foreign language and so forth because of the training. And the World War I was taking place, and a lot of the turmoil in Italy was affecting everybody, and there wasn't enough food to go around. There wasn't enough of anything to go around, and the fascist government was moving in with the war powers, with not the Nazi war powers, and my grandfather wanted to get my father out of the country. So with the help of the Marchese, they took a train from Riccia to Naples, and my father boarded with total strangers, didn't know a soul, boarded a ship called the Ansonia, which was a shipping line, and he came over to he didn't know where he was going. He knew he was going to America, he wasn't sure whether they were going to Ellis Island first or Philadelphia. Ended up being Philadelphia. And there's matter of fact, there's some Italian melodies that you probably are familiar with. The one song that Eugene Moles, the guitarist, they did for me in Nashville was one of my favorites because I could picture my father. The song is called Viaggio, which means voyage in Italian. And I could picture my father coming up on the Ansonia, up the Delaware River, and coming into the harbor at Philadelphia. That music just makes me, I could cry when I hear the music. Because I've asked my father one time in Italian, Pop, what did you think about Philadelphia when you saw it? And he said, Cosa Grande, which means so big. And I think about it sometime today. How did this young kid, whose wife, my mother, hadn't been born yet, up there? I mean, God has a plan for you. And I feel close ties for. I don't know whether people would think of me as being unusual, but I think about it this way. Thinking about my relatives in Italy that go way back through the Roman history. All of those that loved me, or they loved the family, even though they didn't know us, and all of the people that I loved that are no longer with us, I've always figured that while I'm alive and my eyes are opened, I'm the eyes and the ears for all of those people that loved me, that helped me, whether they family, whether they were relatives, whether they were good friends. But through my eyes, I feel like they're seeing what's going on in 2024. They're seeing everything through my eyes. I know that's not something you want to talk about at a dinner party, but that's just the way I feel about it. I just feel a closeness to the people.
Yeah, family very important to Italians in general, and you're carrying on that tradition, and your family is your world. So, in addition to the music, being a prolific musician, songwriter, you've created a sauce company. You were a prospect to be a professional sports athlete. You also created various inventions, some of them pertaining to sports. Here's a letter from Jerry Seaman. I will bring up to the competition committee your ball caddy when we met in 1993. Thanks for your interest in having your product being considered by the National Football League. So you've created some various inventions, and I believe one of them was also for baseball, which was the weighted donut for warming up your bat. Tell us that story.
Well, I was at Riverview High School and coaching baseball, and there was an industrial arts teacher who later became the industrial arts coordinator, supervisor up in Tallahassee for the Florida Public Schools. I went to him in the shop one day and I brought to him a 10-pound weight, a York dumbbell. And I asked him if he could weld a hole in the middle of the dumbbell that we could slide it over a bat and warm up with this weighted bat and then turn the bat upside down and hit it on the ground so it would come off. And I had put black electrician's tape around the inside so it wouldn't scar up the bat. And he did that for me, and he did several for me. And we used this weighted bat for Riverview High School. Played a lot of baseball games, and a lot of teams were curious about. Well, the players would grab 3 bats and swing them around, and our players would just grab their bat that they were going to bat with, and put this donut over it. Well, we decided that we were going to move forward and see if we couldn't get it developed by somebody. Well, I happened to know the equipment manager for the White Sox. And I was talking to him one day, and this shop teacher, we and I went down to see this guy, and he said that, could you give us one that we could try out with the White Sox for spring training? At the time, they were playing at the old park here in town, and we did. We left it with him, and so the season went on, and then the next season, he came to town, and he decided to come forth with the information on what happened to the ball, to the weighted bat idea. Well, at the time, Elston Howard was the manager of the New York Yankees. He saw it. He picked up on the idea, and they challenged our patent on it. We had a patent attorney here in Sarasota that we thought wrote a tight patent, which he did not. And so we lost the patent to Elston Howard. But soon after that, I don't know whether there's a copy of a letter in there from a guy from the Baltimore Orioles. I helped the equipment manager from the Baltimore Orioles develop a shin guard for batters, and they're still using the shin guard.
Oh yeah.
Today, and
Wow.
He's now with the Texas Rangers, I think, the equipment manager. But yeah, so I've had a chance to fortunate enough to meet a lot of these people, and David, you know, the way I feel is this on some of the situations we had to for example, Motown, when they came out with my song, we went to see Bill Guy, and I went to see an attorney in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it was going to end up costing us close to $17,000 with the attorneys to fight Motown. And so we made a decision, let them have it. And they were called the Commodores.
Right.
I'd like to have a nickel from every song of these, every one of the songs that they sold. But I don't have any ill feelings about any of this. It's just that I didn't go far enough to protect it, and it was my fault. You know, so
You lead, I think, when you meet people, you trust them first until you give them a reason not to. You're that kind. I'm the same way, but you just have a kindness to you, and you don't prejudge people. You kind of take them as they are. I think that's one of
Jeanette's father was a country guy, but he was very successful, car salesman, farmer, and he says, Joe, when you go into business with people, you either go into business with the honey people or vinegar people. And he didn't go to the University of Pennsylvania, the School of Business, the Wharton School of Business, to learn that. And I picked up on that right away. Don't you agree? There's honey people and there's vinegar people. You want to stick with the honey people that you can trust. You can make a handshake, and you can trust. And I'm dealing with a guy right now in New York who's beginning to ask questions about the music part of it, and I told him, quite frankly, you're going into the weeds, and I don't understand that. You'll have to talk to my son John, and John is the guy that understands the music business, the business part of it, like you do. And I leave it up to John to make any of the business decisions. So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So.
So we've covered your songwriter, you're an author, you're an inventor, you're a teacher, you're an athlete. What else is Joe Panichello?
Well,
what are you most proud of? What part of you?
The years that I was with, the 15 to 20 years I was with Prentice Hall, the textbook publishing company, which I never thought I would never thought I would end up as one of the managers for a large publishing company, and being actually I went to work for Scott Paper with their education division. They hired me out of Sarasota to move up north, and then Prentice Hall bought that division. but I didn't realize I had a knack for interviewing people for the company around the country, interviewing people for editorial jobs to print science books, English books, math books. Prentice Hall is known for its books on printing for lawyers and litigation, and so I got to know a lot of people in the publishing world with Silver Burdett and Scott Forsman and a number of other companies. I ended up being the recruiter and the sales manager for anywhere from the Atlantic Ocean over to Colorado area. So I don't know how many states that involves, but that's not too bad for an Italian kid from Philadelphia. My father was alive then when I was traveling a lot with Prentice Hall. He was not impressed.
Why is that?
I don't think he was impressed.
He didn't get it, or
He got it. He was an educated man, but he was not impressed. He said he believed in making sure your head didn't get too big. That you were a kid from the neighborhood.
You were feeling pretty good about what you're doing, and he kind of made sure he cut you down to size a little bit, or
I had a company car and traveled all over the country and up to Canada and did different. I was pretty heady stuff. But my father was no. My father would, when I would come home to Philadelphia, he'd say, "Hey," in Italian, "Put the book away."
So he reminded you you're cut from the same cloth he was. Huh? Well, what would he want you to be? What did he want you to be?
Whatever I chose to be, whatever made me happy. Made sure it was legal. Made sure you make a good choice in a wife and a family, and very practical, down to earth kind of people. And they were. I think that's what Jeanette liked about him so much. She heard so many stories from people about the Italians, and when she came to Philadelphia, she said, "Oh no, this family and other family members they're not like the stories that are going around.
Not like the mafia."
Yeah, at the time, that was the big thing. So
the good side, the excuse me, being family oriented and close.
But I tell you about that on the Ansonia. The interesting thing I found out about it, that one of the ships in the Ansonia line, after my father came to America, was sunk by a German U-2 boat, and all of the people were from my father's region coming to America, and Sardinia, I think it was Sardinia, where it took place. No bodies were recovered, and I thought that was I was fortunate. I said, my father made it over here safely, and of course we experienced what like a lot of other people did experience in World War II. We lived through that. That was not easy, and we learned a lot about living in a community and sharing with one another. That's different than today.
Well, with all your stories and the way you tell them and the way you remember them very beautifully, you are less the actor in the movie and more of the character, the subject of a movie. And the way you've lived your life, I think it's
that picture,
inspirational.
Not to interrupt you, but that picture, that's he's one of my admirers. His name is Russ Halk. He's dead now. He died of diabetes, and he was the United States Olympic wrestling coach for 2 Olympics. I'm pictured in that picture there up on your right here. I'm pictured right here. This is right here, the freestyle team. Back on the corner. And I learned a lot from Russ Halk. He played at Duke for a couple of years and then went on to Lock Haven State Teachers College, and then became Bloomsburg put Bloomsburg on the map with wrestling against teams like Iowa and Oklahoma, and yeah, he was like I admired him greatly, and but he's gone now. But
And tell us about your two kids, John and Chris.
John and Chris, what would you like to know about them?
Well, what I admire, I think Lonnie and I both admire, is you guys are so close, and maybe it's just the Italian thing, but they just adore you. You guys are so close, and I mean, it's just to watch you guys as a family is really nice and inspirational.
They're two good guys, and but they're as different as night and day. And John is very open, loves the arts, loves music, loves entertainment, always has, and is very public and easy to get to know. And Chris, on the other hand, is quiet, reserved, gets the job done. Doesn't want anybody to know he got the job done well.
Mm-hmm.
He's that type of guy. He's my father used to say that Chris reminded him of Gary Cooper. He's a peaceable man. He was quiet. Chris was a doer, but do things quietly, get it done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Is that an aspect of you, or is that an aspect of Jeanette?
That's a good question. Probably not of me. John probably follows.
He's more like yeah.
I think Chris, like his mother. His mother was very reserved. She was a Southerner. Jeanette was a very genteel person, if you know what I mean by genteel. She was a very genteel person. I mean, linens for napkins and tablecloths. Whether you had a card table, whether the card table was your table, the fine linen for your dinner. I'm from Philadelphia. It was like, we're going to put it on the table, and whoever gets to the bowl first, you can pass it around. But it's not boarding house reach, but it's close to it, you know. But I was always impressed with Jeanette's genteelness.
And where was she from in the South?
She was from Kernersville, North Carolina, near Winston-Salem. But she was a lady. She was a lady. Hat, white gloves, flower, go to church. When we the first time we went to church, and there were people that came to church, she said, "Joe, these people look like they're getting ready to go play golf." It was at Incarnation Church in Sarasota. She couldn't get over that the change was coming. The change was beginning to come in society. The society and the culture was changing, and she didn't like anything about it. But she was a teacher at Sarasota High School, and she taught in room 210, and was a good teacher. And so the kids were fortunate to have her as a teacher.
Well, from your stories, she also seemed very take charge kind of gal too. She's no pushover.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. But in a very gentle way, and
ladylike.
Yeah. Yeah. You got company. So
Chris just walked in.
Hey, Chris, I'm being
We're just
interviewed
talking
by David.
Do you want to step in? just like your dad described you.
You have any other questions, David?
No, I think it's great. Anything we should talk about? We talked about the Joe, the Renaissance man. All his various endeavors, and how Jeanette and family were the focus of all his expression, whether it's in music or his books and etc. And we were just ending on talking about his two sons and how they adore him. And what about you? Anything else you want to say, Joe?
No, except they're two good guys, and everything that happened to me in the last couple of years, if it hadn't been for them and their wives, I wouldn't be here today.
Mm.
I wouldn't be here today. I owe a lot to them, but I'm glad that we had a chance to do this, David.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
well, if you become an internet success, you might have to come back and do another one.
I have to tell you one true story about being an overnight success. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Jim Valvano had just won the title, the NCAA title, NC State in basketball. And so now they were back in Raleigh, and he called the house. He wanted to know if he could get his hands on some sauce, some of the sauce, because his mother was coming down from New York, and he was going to make spaghetti and meatballs and so forth, and he wanted to have the sauce. So I got some sauce together and went down to his office, to Valvano's office, and remember now he was known nationally as being the NCAA basketball champion. Okay, so I went to his office, and the secretary was a nice lady, and she was opening the door to let these two people. They had cameras with them and so forth. They were a man and a woman. They were leaving, and she was saying goodbye to them. And Jim, will see you now, Joe. So I went into his office, and he was cleaning up his desk and everything, and trying to straighten everything back up again. And he says, "Have a seat over here." And in the room was Bob Guzzo, the wrestling coach, and the baseball coach, Sam Esposito, used to play for the White Sox, and they were already in the room. And I said, "Well," I said, "Did you have a nice meeting with these folks?" I saw the camera and everything. I was just talking, and he says, "They're from ESPN," and I thought, "Oh boy, ESPN." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "It only took me 20 years to be an overnight success, Joe." He said, "You got the sauce with you?" It took him 20 years to be an overnight success. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And soon after that following year, it was 5 gallons of gas in the roadmap for him. He was gone. They got a different coach. Yeah. Different philosophy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guy's 15 minutes of fame.
5 gallons of gas in a roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, but I was glad to do this for you, David. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. We love you, and it's always nice to catch up with you and chat with you and hear your story.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.